My name is Toby Johnson, and that's my boy Jude. We're on the trail of a mystery, and the footprints we're finding are leaving quite the impression. It seems whoever or whatever's leaving them keeps some puzzling company. We don't always know where they're leading, but one thing's for sure, they're taking us way off track.
Up above the ridge behind me was the first encounter with these lights while I was out Bigfooting. These lights were absolutely amazing. Now I say lights because they showed themselves 4 different times on one night and on one occasion a separate night down the road. One evening with another person I was up on this ridge and we were sitting in a with our backs to the old growth in a bench type seating scenario, looking down at a grove of trees with the full moon coming in at us. As that full moon started to arc its way across the night sky about 11 o'clock in the evening, a light so bright about 40 feet up in a Doug fir tree line in front of the trees, like an arc welder blasting out. It must have been at least 35-40 feet in diameter for maybe a second at the most. It was so big and so bright that you expected to hear a blast with it. I'd been told that this, of course, could happen. It happened a second time that night. It happened a third time that night. It happened a fourth time that night. Each time stair-stepping through the tree line, always in front of us. And I'm going to say that the tree that we were, the grove of trees that we were looking at, I'm going to say they're probably as far as I am right now, to a little bit farther than this actual Doug fir tree here, right close to the road. It took itself about 45 minutes or so for it to stair step each of those 4 times. By the 4th one, it was fairly close to the ground, certainly less than 35 feet off the forest floor. So we went down to the area close to midnight and approached it to double check, of course, for what else could it have been other than a supernatural event. We could not explain it. It was a clear night. There were no game cams. There was no hoaxing. There was no sound. It was very bright out. And there was absolutely no reason for that light to be there other than the fact that it wanted to be there and it didn't care who saw it. Certainly a Bigfoot area. Certainly we were trying to elicit, Squatch activity. And I think there's a connection here, for better or for worse.
I need to see things. I need to investigate things first. And I haven't done a lot of investigation into that particular phenomenon or those types of reports on those abilities. I have taken reports, dozens of them, including reports of UFOs in the same vicinity at the exact same time that they were witnessed, that the encounter happened. I have taken reports about orbs and lights. I have taken reports and have very credible multiple eyewitness confirmations that there are some things going on that really exceed the norm of even the Bigfoot subject, which, you know, by public standards is ridiculous.
My dad and a couple of his buddies came out here one night, just sitting by the fire, squatching like usual. Well, all of a sudden, one of my dad's friends or something said that she saw something across the field in the meadow, like a light or an orb, whatever. And then so my dad's all like, okay, you know, it was just a flash. Red ones, purple ones, white ones. That's what I know. That is what I know.
As Jude was saying, last fall, the third occasion I saw these lights was in this location. We came in here to give you scale as to what this area looked like. It was pretty much the same. There's no snow. It was in the evening, right at twilight in the fall. And the lights first started to appear over in the field across the way here. They quickly came through the tree line, as I'd seen them do before, about 20 to 30 feet up. At this point, I hadn't seen them. I had only heard somebody describe what was coming our way. Right above Jude's head here, within about, I'd say 40 feet up in the trees, was a little red sphere that was pulsating periodically in different areas, almost like a giant firefly. And then white lights and red lights back in this area. At one point, I remember distinctly being over by the horse tie-off area and having what appeared like a lighter strike above the brim of my baseball cap. You could see it illuminate and cast out. 5 seconds right after that strike, what sounded like a rock was pitched my way, a little tiny one. That unnerved the people that were with us, consequently, so much so that they got inside their vehicles and stayed there for the remainder of the evening. Now, luckily, we have pictures to prove what had happened. Not everything was totally visible with the naked eye. You could see them periodically, and other times it took the photograph in order to capture them. The red light was right there. You can tell definitely by this tree right in this area. So today we're going to see if we can have lightning strike again. We're in an area that is right next to a place name. And when I say place name, I mean the area is named after one of the many different Indian names for Bigfoot. Oftentimes you'll want to go squatching in an area named after something bizarre like Spirit Lake or Devil's Ridge, or in this case, Skookum.
There was a light. And the light was probably, I'm guessing, 50 yards from our position in the building. And it was moving quite quickly. But it wasn't anything off the bat that I went, oh, well, cool, now I get to see a UFO and a Bigfoot or, you know, whatever. It wasn't like one of those things. It was just pretty much, who was that? Maybe an 8 or 9 second sighting of this light. To me, it looked bluish in color, but when I talked to some of my other colleagues that night, they said, I think Kirk said it looked more orangish, and then Wes is like, yeah, it was kind of whitish, bluish, so we all had our own opinions on the color. The color differed. I will say that when we noticed the light, and we walked up towards the front of the building where we could get closer, as close as we could to it without exiting the building and running all the way outside, the light, which was moving on a straight line, tended to drop down instantly. It's kind of like the light, we like to call it an oh crap moment. Like it noticed us noticing it, and it went, oh crap, and it dropped down to the ground. I do think it could have been a person. Was it odd for it to be out in this kind of weather? Whoever it was odd. The time was odd. It was about 3:30 in the morning. It was a Friday night, and this, as you know, it's not the most rural place that you could find in Washington at all. It was odd, though. Probably about 4 to 5 seconds, Kirk Brandenburg had his thermal up, and he was therming that entire ridge line, and he saw nothing. He saw no heat, nothing registered on therm. The next thing that happens is also very interesting, which ties in, and this was the first night that we were out there. We saw the light, we're like, okay, what the heck was that? We saw nothing. We decided to exit the building. And within moments of us exiting the building, someone or something hit the side of that building. Bam, bam, bam. It is not impossible that it was a person. Is it odd that it could be a person? Absolutely. I hope that it's not something paranormal.
Right.
Because I feel like if it is, then are we ever going to actually find out what it is? Probably not. If they can disappear in balls of light, or can travel in balls of light, or whatever you want to call these things, balls of energy, we're probably not going to find this thing. So I come from the camp that I do hope it's flesh and blood and not something paranormal, and has anything to do with the lights that unfortunately, and I do say unfortunately because it bummed me out when I saw that light a little bit, Toby, to be honest with you. And I know it bummed a few other people out that I was present with at the time.
Well, we're going to get started tonight. We are up in an area that we've never seen the lights in. The other spot we're going to go to look for the lights has been rained out considerably, but in thinking that we're going to get dried out here, I think it was probably way wetter. So it's not as though that has hindered the light phenomena when you're out squatching. I've seen them before when it's rainy, but underprepared for a rain deluge.
Lights are another thing. You know, I wasn't there tonight, but the Johnson brothers had these lights following them around orbs over their heads. And it's just a thing. What was that all about? I saw lights up there, control lights coming around, but they weren't following me around over my head like this. It wasn't so far off. It looked like the moon was falling, except in a slow, controlled fashion, kind of pale blue, actually. The enigmatic features, the enigmatic things that were going on, the strangeness of it all, kind of makes you wonder if maybe there's not something else attributed to these things besides just a gorilla in the wood running around. Plus, I've interviewed people for over 40 years now, too, and talked to a lot of people that claim they've saw Bigfoot and UFOs at the same time, you know, dropping off, letting off, or whatever. I interviewed the chief's son one time, and I asked what their lore was about these crazies. Well, they're here to help us. They came down in a ball into the water and swam out. And I said, well, if they're here to help us, why don't they help us?
Right, and these orbs. Right. You talked about orbs. I've seen these orbs you've talked about, and I don't have an explanation for them either. They, the few that I've seen vary in size, but I mean I've seen them, you know, this big, and they'll illuminate stuff as they go. Like they're like one of those little lights that you shake, break, and shake. Except the shake and the plastic stuff isn't there. It's just it's like the glow is there, but the object making the glow isn't there. It's really pissed me off. Really, you know, I don't really, I mean, I know these people go, if this thing is like a UFO thing, we're screwed, man. We got no chance of getting our hands on this thing. If that's what it is, if it's somehow connected to that phenomenon, wow, man, it's going to be hard to get DNA. The woo factor, the problem with that is, I mean, I suppose people can still go and research that, but it follows the trickster, the joker,
You know, the shamans talk about the trickster, the raven, the shapeshifter, these things. They seem to delight. They seem to be attached to some psyche, whatever it means to be human. They're somehow connected to us, right? They've been connected to us forever. They're in our fairy tales. They're in our stories. They're in a mythology. It's why we're scared of the dark at night. It's why we have nightmares, right? It's almost as if some of that functions in the dream reality. Are you going to go and, give me some DNA from your dream? I think that's what you're tasked with at this point.
Well, night one of the investigation of the lights. We have been rained out. It's coming down fairly hard. We're doing a little car camping right now. It would be fruitless for us to try to set up a tent and make it work. We pulled in fairly late anyway. Hopefully things clear up by tomorrow and we can get into the area and try to catch some of this. Over and out.
Well, you were saying when you said something about lights, I go, yeah, that's strange, because I was trying to tell you about, there was this one time when I woke up in the middle of the night and there was this huge light hovering over one of the mountains back towards the Northgate Creek Road area, and I just watched it for a long time, and it would move like a triangle kind of, and then it would stop, and so yeah, like a triangle, and it would just stop in just midair, like no movement. So I'm thinking, I watched it for a long time. I finally woke up my ex-husband and said, "You're not going to believe me, so wake up and look at this." He woke up and he stared at it for about 15 minutes, and it didn't move while he was looking, and I'm like, it's just staying still now. And then he went, "I'm not going to sit here and watch all night. I want to go back to sleep." And I'm like, okay. And I watched it for about 15 more minutes till I just crashed out. But it was a weird light hovering over the mountain. And then after that, many times, like a tiny little pea-sized light would come into the third floor is what my room was. And it would just kind of like zoom like all over the room and then just like stop in certain little areas. Just literally just a little tiny light. It was like about as big as my finger and tip of my finger. And then it would move all over, like, and it would stop and then move all over. And I would always like look at this light and think, well, shoot, what the heck is it? It almost had a little tint of a white glow to it. It never got like huge or anything like that I can recall or remember. Just like come in like a light in the window. Like sometimes I would think, is there a car out there? But the street, nothing. I live off of the road, so nothing would. I'd look out for planes or just anything that could. There was nothing, and it would just come in and zoom all over the room in weird little zoomy patterns and stop, and it was almost kind of like, I don't know, like it was like a little bug or something that would watch, and just take in. That's it.
Thank you for tuning in to episode 1 of Off Track. This episode and all future episodes will be directed the same way, pretty much, on the fly and on the cheap. It's a little hard to catch flying balls of energy through the woods with just an iPhone, but as for now, that's the way this whole production's being done, including the music and editing, soft and hard cuts. They were a little rough, but we'll get it down as we go along here. Our goal is really just to put forth the information and see what becomes of it. If you have any questions, of course, respond on the YouTube channel, as you may or may not do. And I'll see if I can get a question answered for you. Stay tuned for episode 2. It's probably going to be at least a couple of months out, and try to include Jude more in it. Something tells me he's probably going to be quite the popular kid. He sure is to me. And with that, I bid you all a friend of the feet goodbye, and we'll see you in the trees.